you doing, people? It's Psyc-O here. What I'm basically going to do today is just give you a quick overview of how I put the anthem together. So this overview, I basically apply this same principle to every track that I make. So what I'm going to basically do is I'm going to start with the project setup, show you how I put things into groups, why I put things into groups, then show you how that corresponds with the mixer and the flow of sound through the mixer, through buses and sends, and then some basics on drums and the bass and how I approach making a tune and how I structure that tune. So stick around, we're going to delve into that right now. Okay, so the first thing I do is I keep all my groups of sounds in groups, and what that enables me to do is, say I need to isolate and just listen to the drum tracks all together so I can mix the drums. It's easy to manage. I can just click one button and solo the drums like this, so we've got all the drums on their own like this, and then we can literally just work on the drums themselves. I find this way of working really good. It simplifies when you're mixing down certain sounds, when you're mixing down just the drums. We'll stop that so you can hear me. Yeah, so that just basically makes it easy to control sort of like the whole mix. And as you can see, say that the blue, I color code as well. So the blue is the drums, the red is the bass, as you can see here. Instruments, I've got green, sound effects yellow, and the vocals green. Each of these groups can be isolated and worked on individually, especially if you've got any niggly sounds that you can't quite work out where they're coming from. It's easy to isolate the groups so you can actually identify those sounds and act accordingly and make any adjustments that you need. While we're here as well, we just heard the drums isolated. Let's expand the bass and play the bass on its own. Give you a little feel. I gotta throw in the drums quickly. And then things like sound effects. Everything is on its own group, like I said previously. It just makes it so much easier to manage, and then you can apply effects to the group as a whole, so you can save on processing power and keep sounds or the effects on sounds kind of uniform, and that kind of helps the structure of the tune and the consistency of the tune as well. My go-to tool for my sound effects, I kind of use. The machine is my good little friend, as you can see, and I can control everything in here. We've got the mix for the individual sounds. So it's just another layer to how I make beats. Sometimes what I do as well is like I will actually make my beats in here as well, but in this instance I've literally just used it for the sound effects. Right, so you've seen my sequencer set up. So now this is the way I set my mixer up. So the mixer's pretty much set up as a sequencer. Like all the groups have got their own individual bus. But what I do as well is the kick and the snare, they have their own bus, but things like the hi-hat and the percussion, that goes into a drums group, as you can see here. So it will go into that drums group. Same with the bass and all the different individual sounds. So there'll be a number of sounds, but they will go into one bus. Like all of the bass sounds will go into that bass bus, and then so on with like the sound effects. But then what happens along the mixer, now back in the day when you were using analog, your sound was defined by what route or what hardware your sound would pass. So that's how you get your individual sound, like going through compressors, going through like sound modules and stuff like that. Each of those individual hardware instruments or like hardware pieces of equipment, they kind of have their own underlying sound. So when you pass it through the mixer, like you'll be building up that sound, and that's how you can have your own individual sound. But how I do it is so like all of the individual sounds that go into the buses will end up going into one of these. So say for instance, we'll address the kick and the snare. So the kick and the snare, as you can see here, they go into their main bus, but then they go into their own bus towards the end of my mixer, and the percussion go into the all drums. But then what also happens is once I've processed the kick and the snare, getting the sound how I want it, and like the effects I use, that's a video for another day because I'd have to go quite in depth with that. So I'm just like scratching the surface right now. But what happens is it will go into their own individual buses, and in their main buses, these are the sends here, like all the effects and stuff like that. So there's a lot going on under the hood here. It's not just a case of sequencer, master out. It goes through a flow. So each individual sound I can process. Now a little tip, over on this side of the mixer, that's where I will set my main levels for my gain staging. And a little tip is the sounds or the plugins usually work best at about -18 dB or below. So if you go over that, like some plugins will struggle when your sound can sound a bit funny. I'll keep the sounds at -18 on that side of the mixer. But then on this side, we can really start having effects and pumping the sound up, but keeping it all controlled. And so how the sound works is, like I was saying, they will go into these buses here, and then depending on sort of like the stereo of the sound, whether it's stereo or mono, they'll go into a pre-bus. So mine will go into a pre-mono or a pre-stereo. But then after it passes through there, it will go into the all pre. Then from the all pre, it will go into the master. I mix and master my own tracks as well. But again, that's another video for a different day. So that basically, in a nutshell, is my mixer. What I also use is I use analyzers to help me keep a visual eye on the actual sound, especially when it comes to the mixing and mastering and getting the levels right, so it sounds good on all sort of like systems. I heavily use analyzers to keep an eye on things. When it comes to things like sound design, that's another video, but I didn't mention it before, but I use Cubase for the bass and things like that. Serum 2, which is brilliant. The beats, I will either use individual hits, or for some things I'll use samples, as most of us do. Right, so that's the end of my little short video of how I put the Anthem together and how I generally approach making a track. Thanks for watching. I'm going to make future videos and go a bit deeper on the actual processing, plugins and sound design. So if that is something you want to see, put a little comment and I'll get that done. But again, thank you very much for watching. It's been your boy Psyc-O, and that's how I made the Anthem.